this. Yeah, that's nice.
I think you also have to, there's a book I read a number of years ago called Flooding on Main Street. John somebody, I can't remember the author, his last name, but it talks about the big picture of sea level rise. And I'm not kidding, it's Greenland melting and some other ice flow melting, and how all those systems then end up flooding Las Olas Boulevard. So I think that sea level rise is going to be addressed on the big, you know, the Paris Accord and the big stuff. But we, as community builders, are going to also be addressing it by, as you redevelop a site, as you do new development, you are absolutely building to a higher standard. It's a higher standard in how much water you're retaining on site. It's a higher standard in, you know, what my base flood elevation is. There's you're putting more green on the site and less parking. We're basically today on the Florida Building Code, the South Florida version of it, you are 80% the way to a LEED certification of silver.
Yes.
Just by meeting the requirements of the Florida Building Code. That's to Florida's credit. Now, and then local governments say, okay, we want you to go the next step and take it to a higher certification. And there is not a development that I'm involved in, and I'm sure for you, that doesn't have, but it's not necessarily LEED. LEED has other baggage on it. There's a number of other different
Florida Green Building you could do.
Right.
Besides significant cost.
Well,
besides significant cost to get that four-letter word certification, it's really expensive.
It is.
but
Really expensive.
But I think also people have accepted that you say, you're transparent and say, I am building to LEED silver standard,
Yes.
but I'm not certified because of the cost. People are accepting this if you show them
and
that
that's what the US
transparency.
Green Building, and the Florida Green Building Standards will allow you to do. LEED, in order to get their certification, the paperwork associated with that, and the way they do their point system, if you are, because we're in a peninsula, we're not using local materials. So it's very hard to meet some of the LEED stuff as it goes on.
It's so complex that if you have a project and if you want it to be LEED certified, you have to hire a consultant just to do the paperwork.
Right.
To do it because it's too burdensome for someone like me to do, given the other things related to the development.
I was recently on a panel. I was actually with Steve Palmer, who's the CFO at a company, an old friend of mine. We were on a panel, the business case for building resilient properties. And I'll simplify a 2-hour panel with the following. When we are looking at an office building, if you go into a building that is code compliant today, a contemporary, like the office building we're building on the Main, it's going to have systems in place that when the next hurricane comes, because we know it's going to come, instead of being down for 5 days or a week and losing literally millions of dollars in revenue to my law firm, they're down 1 day, 2 days. That is, because we can't get business interruption insurance anymore in the state of Florida either. You just, not if you're a big law firm, forget it. I think we may get it out of England, we may get it through whatever the English one. Yeah, Lloyd's. But most large organizations, you can't get it in South Florida, or you can't afford to get it because it's so expensive. So, am I going to go into a smart building that was designed in 2019? Or am I going to go stay in the building that was built in 1991 and barely has its electronics handling the elevators and systems in places that aren't going to flood for any kind of storm event? So there's a huge business case for going, for building to the higher standard also.
You also have to, from a government side, it's easy to say fancy words and say, I believe this, we're going to do that, we're doing this. It's easy to say. The question is, in reality, you're going back and changing your code that allows for things and taking into consideration changes in environment, changes in climate. You could say lots of things, but if you actually don't go back and do that, you really haven't done anything except speak words. As I say to my kids, words are easy, deeds are more important. Show me, don't tell me. And I'm one of those that, and Debbie knows this, I'm not a quiet, shy guy. And if I believe in something, I'm gonna go stand on the top of the tallest building and scream about it. If I believe it's right, I'm gonna fight for it. In today's environment, I play politics. I don't play partisanship. I don't care if you're a D, an R, an I. If the project's a good project, go do it. And get on board, get the community regardless, because the community isn't about, to me, partisanship. It's about what's right for the community. And in today's political world, there are tensions going on, people sitting on daises that might belong to different parties and have different beliefs, so therefore they're not going anywhere. To me, is it right? Is Stiles designing something, is Debbie going to bring it forth? And to me, people believe they belong to a party, so therefore the philosophy of a party says X. I don't give a rat's patootie. They don't. Is it right for the community? For me, it's politics, it's not partisanship. And there are too many people who try to say they're trying to impose other wills out there. And to me, it's about what's right. So for me, I would suggest to you, just understand the community you're going to be in, wherever it is, and what it's comprised of. And get to know before you walk into a city hall who the planning director is, who the city manager is, who the elected officials are, so when you sit down and talk to them, you have an understanding of what the belief system is, what their vision is. It's not difficult. Yeah, it takes some time. The internet's a great thing. You guys know how to do that better than I do. So you can do it, you know, while having a cup of coffee and learn about somebody. But it's important. Especially, they got to deal in Fort Lauderdale. That whole commission basically changed. It's not like some people are relatively new. The mayor's been out there before and he had certain beliefs. Is he being true to his beliefs? What he's done now as mayor compared to when he was a commissioner? Where's the city going? And it's not my place to say good, bad. I may agree or disagree with the mayor, and that's okay, but it's his community. But I look at it as part of our bigger communities. I care what they do there too.
You know, one of the things, and this may be the right moment, Jessica mentioned we were going to talk about, this is something that Thomas and I have been talking about, and some of you that were maybe in the judging that we did, yeah, I got really angry with some people, and I didn't hold back, so were you beaten up on that day?
A little.
It
was good. It was good.
You probably deserved it.
I did.
But one of the things that I think the three of us share, and in part because Jessica's in an organization that is fundamentally believes in the same thing, that we all as community builders have a social responsibility, and that you're not just, my kids went to Georgetown and there's a motto there, doing well by doing good. And there is a responsibility for Dan to take on the tough decisions in the face of whether it's just the abuse that an elected official takes or the threat of being voted out, which has never been a concern for him. And to his credit, because if you're always wondering, if you're an elected official, always wondering about whether the next thing's going to elect you, if you're going to be, or unelect you, what ends up happening is you're not doing good. You're just doing what's you think is good for you. And I think we are confronting these issues today more and more because we're doing infill development, we have an established community, and we have tough issues that we have to deal with. The most dramatic, I think, talked a moment ago, is affordable housing. I do a lot of affordable housing, and I have been doing affordable housing permitting for my entire career. So it is almost tougher today than it was then. And it is because somehow people don't believe that everybody should live in their community. And just because somebody earns less money than other people, they don't have the right to a decent housing. So talk, Dan, about...
and I will, but let me revert back to one second, because you asked a question about the leasing with Broward College and the competition. Let's assume Stiles was here Company X was here and all things were equal, Stiles goes like this because of who Terry Stiles was in this community. This community, you're sitting in a building that has Mr. Huizinga's name on it.
They're going to the Terry Stiles School of Real Estate.
I'm saying, these things aren't an accident. There are awards now being named for Terry. They are icons in this community who cared not only about building, but about sense of place. And that, when you have two equals, but you know who the person is that's driving it, and their commitment to the community, okay, they just got a big check mark next to their name. All things being equal. And I would actually say there's a potential that even if the other company may have been a little further ahead, might have been an unknown. They know what they got here. Because they have done this across the community, and it is about community. So those are important factors, and particularly that company with that name in this community goes far. So it is about culture, corporate culture in your community, and where does that fit in? So it's just Terry was. I had the pleasure towards the end when we were doing the sales tax. Broward Workshop is a rather white shoe group of folk on the east side. Many of them belong to one political party. They're generally not the tax and spend folks. They're usually the very conservative folks. And here I was coming advocating penny sales tax. And I got Terry on board to say he believed in the sales tax because it was good for the community to attract businesses here to make this home so you can move their employees around. So you start making decisions of what's the best for our future. And affordable housing is a significant crisis we have in our community. We've been trying to figure out, though, today, what's the definition of affordable housing and who's it for? A few years ago, when Debbie and I started walking this, she's walked along with me, but when we started partnering on this, it was about those who provided a lot of services in our service industry, in our hospitality industry. Having 3, 4, 5 families in a small home or an apartment, how do you make them comfortable and provide them with a place up? Today it's now gotten to seniors, teachers, firefighters. So the definition of affordable housing changes. Is it now workforce housing different than affordable housing? Will people allow what is known as an affordable housing project in their community? Fort Lauderdale's going through it now. Debbie knows it well. Of NIMBYism is tremendous. When the golf course community project I was talking about in Weston, that went on for 14 months, the developer came out and went to the community before he came to me in the commission. Had a bunch of napkin drawings. It then got spun out that he was building an affordable housing project. He was never building an affordable housing project. But it got perceived that it was, and therefore I couldn't put that genie back in the bottle. Because in people's minds today, affordable housing has a certain connotation to it. Everyone says Section 8 housing. Yeah. I'm a New York boy, I know what projects look like. And when I moved here 23 years ago, somebody said, let me show you the project. And they took me to Sistrunk, okay, in the northwest corner of the city, and showed me bungalows. And I said, where are the buildings? Project for me is a 30-story concrete thing. Walk the stairs of 30-story buildings, so it's a function of where you are. But in today's world, you design, Jessica can design, and Debbie can represent an affordable housing building, and you'll never know it has affordable housing units in it. To say that I'm also one of those that believes affordable housing and transportation have to go like this. You can't say in every project, in every city, there's going to be an affordable housing component. There may be dollars you can contribute to a fund to build affordable housing. But unless you put the transportation component in, and that 19% people have to spend on transportation, they can't afford it. So if you come out to Weston and put in a new project for residential affordable housing units and you give those people who live there no transportation, you've created an island for them. What have you done? That to me is a problem. That's a problem, is you have to do smart development between affordable housing, mixed use development, and transportation together. Because if you don't, you're not benefiting the community you're actually trying to serve. So I scream from the top of the buildings about that, and people think I'm crazy. And it's not about concentrating it in certain cities that have it now and giving them more and Parkland less. It's not what I'm saying. Developers have an opportunity to contribute to funds to build affordable housing. And I'm a proponent of that. Debbie and I and a bunch of other development lawyers went into the county administrator's office and continued to have a conversation of how do we make it right? How do we build the money we need locally? Because getting tax credits and all that stuff is really difficult to get. So how do we create the funding here to build affordable housing? Make it go. Too many people don't want to have the conversation.
I have a question, if you could clarify this, please, for the context of for the students here, and me, too. I used the city of Weston in my GIS class, when we actually map out disposable income available per zip code. And the South Florida Business Journal, you're smiling already. I do this since I moved here to teach this class on the ground, so I'm coming up for the third time doing this. Just a few weeks-ish, Christmas time, the South Florida Business Journal had this on the headline, on the front page, the wealthiest zip codes in South Florida. Weston was part of it, and then surprisingly, actually also Southwest Ranches. And if you do a drive-by visiting tour, beautiful homes. Like, wow, you're living in a different world.
That's where Landmark's developing their communities over on south of Griffin Lake.
So, can you clarify the misperception we have about the city of Weston? Because you said you have all the typical problems of a city. We are touching now the topic of social justice, injustice, and affordable housing. Not even starting about looking at the town center and how you deal with homeless people in respective. But tell us a little bit about your community, as in who are the residents of Weston? Because they are not the residents of downtown Las Olas.
Some of them are.
And where do they work? Because when we talk about transportation and commuting, is a resident of Weston living and working in Weston, or are they running 595 for a downtown office job, or vice versa?
All of the above. And yes, the South Florida Business Journal continues to put out on an annual basis multi-zip codes, and yes, some of our zip codes are usually in that. When you look at home prices and home values, we're usually near the top on that.
What's your median income?
Not cheap.
It's
I think it's
$136,000.
$136,000 to $140,000. That's our median income.
To compare the
Per
rest of
capita
our
household.
area, the median income in the city of Weston is $136,000. In Broward County, it is $62,000. And in the city of Fort Lauderdale, it's $53,000, and in Hollywood, it's $36,000. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And that is again per household, and we are facing now double income households.
Correct.
More than 20 years ago, where you have been surviving on a single income. So ask yourself, if you're growing up, if you're a product of a single income family, or double income, or even a single parent family. That is a major shift in demographics and the way of we form our culture.
Again, there is this perception of who we are, and then there's reality.
Well, give us the reality.
The reality is we have overdoses like other cities have. We have domestic violence like other cities have. We have folks who need to have seniors who need to have Meals on Wheels come deliver them meals at the end of the day. We hide behind really nice landscaping. We've got really big berms, and when I love getting home, and I know when I get off of 75 and I see where I am, my shoulders slump down and I relax. But I also know in our community, we have a program called Harvest Drive. Harvest Drive was started 20-something years ago by a family at an elementary school to help serve those in our community that can't afford Thanksgiving and the holidays. It's now turned into a countywide project that started at an elementary school in Weston, Country House Elementary School. Today, there are students from Cypress Bay High School and Western High School, two of the main campuses, that help hand out food to others. And then when their friends are gone, we'll wait and pick up their bags of food and take them home. In our community. Perception is great. People can drive fancy cars. People can wear really nice clothes, but we also have lots of folks who own homes that have no furniture in. It's nice to have a nice house. Is it really your home? Bonaventure is an older part of our community. It decided to join the city of Weston after the city was incorporated. It had a choice of joining either Sunrise or Weston. It joined Weston. Bonaventure community is a separately master planned community. A lot of older condos, a lot of older people. Folks who need services differently than the rest of us who moved here in the past 20, 30 years. Business executives, sports personalities. We're also the home of Cleveland Clinic that just developed another $252 million worth of projects in our city. But the Bonaventure community is an older part of our community that we are constantly trying to say, how do we provide the same level of services that we have in the rest of the city? When Bonaventure was developed, it was never a city park. And there's a project going on now, one of the golf course projects that's getting redeveloped, that we got as a city 2 pieces of property. On one end we're putting a fire station, and another end we're putting a city park. Because to us it's important that there's what people say the Arvida section of Weston. Oh, we're the Bonaventure community, you don't like us. We're like the stepchildren. And when the vote was going on, I said we're all one Weston. How do we become one community? And it's part of the social fabric of who we become. Bonaventure used to be a older Jewish northern retiree community. No one knows that. You go to the Bonaventure community, the Indian population is exploding. People wouldn't think that there are people from India living in Weston. Tons of them. It's one of our largest, fastest growing subcultural communities in the city of Weston. India. Look at who the technology companies are that are here. Look at American Express. Look at who's around. To your point of whether people stay in the city or commute, my office is at Cypress Creek in 95. Used to be in downtown Miami. Been there, done that. X amount of people stay local and work from home. A lot of professionals will drive to Fort Lauderdale or somewhere in between. So it is transportation intensive. The city manager drives 2 miles from his house to City Hall. Drives a nice car, but he doesn't really put many miles on it. I leased a car 6 months ago. I've already got 14,000 miles on it.
But he still drives 2 miles.
It's 2 miles, but that's...
He doesn't have a choice.
He does, in our community, you don't have a choice. You really don't. And you could bike, but that then requires you to make sure wherever you're going that there are showers and enough places to change. As part of the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization's long-range transportation plan a number of years ago, I chaired the board of that for 4 years when we did the 2035 long-range transportation plan. And it was about building hubs that people can take their bicycle, get to a train station, shower, leave their bike, have a locker, then get on a train and go to work. We were trying to make us a multimodal community. And that's part of what building sense of place is when you get downtown is you might not need the car. By us, you do. Scooters, and I'm not letting scooters in for nothing. To me, they're a hazard waiting to happen. But people choose to make us home. We've got all A-rated schools. It's not an accident. It's a special place. But you know what? It's got so many rules that when I moved there 23 years ago, I moved there because my brother lived there. My brother now lives on 46 acres in Pine Mountain, Georgia. Okay, you want to go from rules to absolutely none? If you don't like the rules in a given community, you're not going to live there. And by us, there's lots of them. And if you don't like it, you're not going to be there. You're going to need a car. That's just the reality.
You mentioned high school teachers or for affordable housing. We'll come back to that affordable housing part. Can a high school teacher afford to live in the city of Weston? Because we did 2 years ago,
Yes.
we did a project here in a class with the $500 million extension for the Airclades International Airport up in Clewiston. And when I talked to the county commissioners up there, they said they had the second time in a row a teacher, high school teacher, the week before school starts, quit the job because he and she could not find housing affordable enough for their income. Don't say affordable housing, but they couldn't find housing there.
Weston's housing stock is diverse. You can find it. The question is, might it be in the neighborhood you want to live in? But there is a diverse housing stock from 1- and 2-bedroom condos all the way up to I'm going to a wedding tonight at the largest house in the city of Weston. It's a mansion. Okay, but there's everything in between. Are those numbers continuing to go up? Yeah. I mean, our property values last year only went up 1.4%, 1.6%. We normally plan on it being, according to the property appraiser, 4.5%. We viewed a lot of that was because of this proposed project, and people were really upset about what it was going to do to their property values. So houses like stop selling. When the Great Recession happened a few years ago, lots of cities tanked. Their property values plummeted. We went down and dropped. So we never went down far enough that we had to climb back up. So while our numbers may not be leading the pack on growth every year, we never went down far enough. We're always going up. And we continue to project that we're going to continue to go up. Is it cheap to live by us? No. But like I said, people choose that because that's where they want to be, and they've got the wherewithal, or they find a way to make it happen. For some people, the zip code's important. They want the zip code. Others say it's more about who I am as a person, and they don't want to be there. Choose it. But it is, we've got 5 Publix in town. When Arvida was developing the city, way back when, the Publix rationale was, you build a new Publix for every 15,000 people. You got 5, okay, 75,000 people. Oh gosh, we've got 70,000 people. There's not another supermarket to be found in the city of Weston. And people are saying, can you go get me Lucky's? I'm a Lucky's fan. I love Lucky's. I love a place that you can walk around with a beer while you're shopping on a Sunday afternoon. To me, there's nothing better than that. And Lucky's has reached out and said, hey, we'd love to come out there. The problem is, come to us on the west side of the county. Jessica's going to do her concentric circles, and her tenants are going to do their concentric circles to say, how many rooftops, if I build a store there, what's the disposable income within the circles? Half of it's the Everglades. They're going, we're not coming there. We're going to go to Griffin Road and 75. There's a Outback there. They originally wanted it on the west side. The problem is if you moved it to the east side, there were more roofs going south and east, not west. So I say to folks, I can't, as a community, entice Whole Foods, Fresh Market, Lucky's, take your pick of whomever, to come because they look at their circles and say, we're not going to generate the revenue. And I look and I say, you've got 70,000 captive people just in this city that are prepared to, if you do it right, they'll spend every disposable dollar in your store and never leave. You put a Fresh Market, you put a Whole Foods, you put a Lucky's by us, you'll be fine. But that's not how their financial people look at it. And that's been the toughest part for us as a city, is to entice retailers or business people who do retail to come to us, because just financially their norm of how they look at things doesn't work because of the Everglades.
You just transformed the GIS class for fall, because usually I have individual projects. We're going to find 2 sites in Weston. We're doing this whole shebang from the GIS class just for 2 sites.
Listen, I have a friend of mine who's in the financial services industry, and one of their other pet things they do is sort of build like Funky Buddha type things, their own brewery. And he called me, he says, Weston. I'm like, yes. We want to build there. I said, I'd love for you to come. Where can we do it? I have to find a place. Now, I could probably find an old, when Weston was developed, it concentrated residential in one part of the city, commercial, industrial in another. Those big box warehouses are really good for redevelopment.
Yep.
Really good for redevelopment. So you know what? Take one of those big box warehouses, it's on a lake, turn it into a West Side Funky Buddha type establishment. Now, I'd love to see that happen. The question is, are people going to come to what is an industrial community to go visit that Funky Buddha West, for the sake of picking a name, when you're literally, it's in a destination, but there's nothing else there? Now, I'm prepared to try to make that happen. I also then have to deal with the 6 restaurateurs that are friends of mine that own what would be competing places to theirs to say, hey, you know, what are you doing? That's what I think is right. So, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, so.
There's a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is the city of Weston is doing anything itself to promote affordable housing?
Yes, we are. As we continue to have folks that come in and talk about development, the question becomes, I'm not a proponent of or nor a believer in inclusionary zoning, I'm not. I don't. Do I believe we all have a social obligation to be part of the solution and not create the problem? Yeah. But until we build out the transportation system, to me it's silly. They wanted to cut the only bus route, Broward County a number of years ago wanted to take bus route 23, the only form of public transportation that our taxpayers pay for, they wanted to cut it out. And I said, you can't do that. So they went from the normal bus to the small bus, and we're trying to build ridership. If they had accomplished that, and let's say Debbie wanted to come build a project that had affordable housing in it, how do we move those residents? So to me, every project that comes in, either you need to somewhere address it internally or help contribute to a fund that will allow for it to be done. We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
You guys, there's a.
Sorry.
Go on now.
You say moving the residents, but affordable housing for people that can afford their own form of transportation.
Well,
What's the other problem?
we have, listen, like I said, we've got diverse housing stock where if people want to, you can get a house in the 100, 200, you can actually. And if you have a two-income family, teachers, I know a lot of two-income family teachers that raise families in our community. It exists. So yes, high school teachers do live by us. Educators do live by us. I'm looking at more of the question becomes what definition of affordable housing are we using? Is it about single-family home ownership? That's a whole separate conversation. But is it about, in today's parlance, we're having this significant conversation in this county and in this region about building affordable housing and how do we fund it? And I'm a proponent of it. Can it go everywhere at one time? No. Because we got to build out the social fabric to make it go.
Let me talk about the first step, and Dan is very familiar with this one. I don't know if Jessica is yet, but she should be, because it's going to revitalize some of the strip commercial centers in Broward County. Dan mentioned Broward Next, which was the redo of a 35-year-old land use plan, comprehensive plan for the county. The county created a land use category called commerce, and commerce was a way to collapse industrial, office, retail, all the non-residential uses that primarily in this community are along our major transportation corridors. Commercial Boulevard, University Drive, Federal Highway, not outside of Weston, forget about Weston. Maybe Weston Road, maybe sort of behind those berms. But the commerce category, we all looked at it and went, oh, how nice. We can do non-residential development without worrying about where the line is between industrial and office. Well, very smart executive director for the Broward County Planning Council, and I don't know what hand you had in this. Everyone was saying, look, we have an affordable housing crisis. We have a number of retail strip centers all around the county that are dark or half dark. They're dying. Can we get a twofer? Can we get economic development and breathe life into these retail centers and provide affordable housing and put it on transportation corridors? Ding, 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 ding.
So we do a bunch of those things, we give you bonus densities.
Well, more than that. More than that. The beauty and what was passed without discussion at the Broward County Planning Council just last month, when I walked in and he goes, you left before I saw you. He said, you passed it without discussion. I was in, I was out. It is an amendment to the commerce land use category. And if you look at the Broward County Land Use Plan, Broward Next Plan, and see where commerce land use is, where you could have unlimited residential density. Now, it may be limited by the local government, but as far as the county is concerned, open whatever density you want. As many units as you can fit, provided you are on a transit corridor, and they define what transit means. It means you have bus service or something else going for you. And you incorporate affordable housing including at the very low level, which by the way is individuals earning less than 30% of area median income, that's somebody earning $19,000 a year, another percentage of low, and another percentage of moderate. And these percentages vary based upon how much of each you're going to incorporate. That is inclusionary zoning without the bite. Because what it's saying is, you gotta keep your retail use, so you're gonna take some of it down, but we want you to add residential, we want you to improve the retail, which is from adding households in proximity. We want it to be on a transit corridor, and now cities, you need to put regulations in place that you want, because this gets back to the home rule thing. If you don't want 100 units to the acre in those sites, and maybe you only want 35, it's your prerogative. But we, Broward County, want to facilitate, it's really a threefer. It's transit-oriented development, it's affordable housing, and it's economic revitalization, because it encourages retail owners to come to Jessica and say, could you bring in your housing folks, let's make a deal. I have 2 projects that have already responded to this.
Let me ask you a question for that.
Let's look at
To polarize here. If this is the new thing, why hasn't been that on the menu 10 or 20 years ago? As in, this is the new cool thing to develop land and make the retailers and the developers happy.
This
and the
dirt was
communities.
there and it was cheap.
Exactly.
We could go horizontal.
Yep.
We were going horizontal and it was going west. I mean, that's the urban sprawl we created. Today, look at Brightline, or it's going to be Virgin Line, or whatever they're going to, Virgin Train is going to call it, on the east side. Miami to West Palm Beach. In addition to Brightline running on those tracks, there's going to be the Gold Coast line that's going to run there, which is going to be literally Tri-Rail East. You're going to put commuter rail lines on what is the Brightline track. To me, every community from Miami to West Palm Beach has the opportunity to redevelop inside of itself, all the way up the coast. You put a train stop, gosh, they're going to build a station.
Yes.
Take what is currently around most of the train lines on the east side are industrial, non-high performing land uses, and you redo that density to a mixed use development near a train line, every city on the east side now explodes. You created, in some respects, downtowns along the train lines. Hollywood, El Portal, take it all the way up and down. And we've been trying to suggest this for years, and people don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, hello, economic driver. Economic driver. Transportation is there. Now build the real estate around it. And build it in a way that people can live, get on the train, and walk in that community.
Have you all been on Brightline yet?
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's the best thing since sliced bread.
I haven't, and I haven't been. I haven't been.
What?
I haven't been.
Okay, well,
No, part of it is I just haven't gotten there. I watch it, because I drive to a client every morning and it passes right in front of me. And it's actually whizzing by at 60 and I'm like, I really like to see that. But I haven't been on there yet.
one of our partners is commuting to Miami on Brightline. And he gets off at the Miami Central Station. He gets on the Metro Mover, actually the Brickell legs, because our office in Miami is on Brickell. And he goes and he does this kind of game with himself. He checks how long it would take him if he were driving, and invariably it takes him 22 minutes door to door, and it would take him an hour and 40 on average.
And if you don't have parking provided down there, you would have to pay parking in the garage.
And he has a
That's your
monthly pass with
that's your
Brightline.
pass.
I
Exactly.
mean, listen, I spend a lot of time in my business world, and I work for a consulting firm that deals with distressed businesses. I spend a significant amount of my time in Orlando. Okay, it takes me 3 hours to fly, it takes me 3 hours to drive. Okay, put me on Brightline when it can get me to Orlando and spend that 3 hours where I'm connected, I'm comfortable, and I don't have to worry about traffic and paying attention,
Very
and I can
strong
be on my
Wi-Fi
phone.
signal.
For me, I'm good with that. But that's part of where we are as a community. We need to build out that transportation. People are not going to get out of their cars, whether it's Weston, Parkland, Hollywood, until a system is timely, reliable, and efficient, and people can depend on it. That to me is until that happens, people aren't gonna be believers.
Let me ask you one thing, Jessica, since the site plan or the drawing is up there. Uber has changed the urban landscape. We actually now Uber pickup zones and drop-off zones. Uber Eats is changing the retail industry to some extent as well. Are you considering, if you're creating projects like this, are you actually considering a zone for ride-share, drop-off, and then less parking for
We
that?
definitely plan that for our downtown projects and including the residential projects. They do plan to have separate lanes for that, separate sections for our greenwise as well. For this in particular, we have not created a separate lane, but we have areas where we think that that would be able to occur.
Guys, ask questions.
Do you guys look at neighboring cities or anything to try to incorporate here in Fort Lauderdale?
Neighboring cities.
Yeah, like do you look at how they develop and how they do things and then try to incorporate it here? Do you feel pressure to do that here or inspired?
Well, I think we look and see what works in other cities and what are the best practices, and I can tell you that without a doubt, planners and the heads of the planning department, they definitely look at those things. And all the time when I go in with a retail project and I go to the planning department and they will say, well, look at this shopping center the one in Miramar. They presented me so many pictures of things that are in Weston and said, look at this is beautiful, can you incorporate this into it? Same thing with like in Parkland, and they say, incorporate all of these things into your shopping center. So yes.
It's interesting because Fort Lauderdale, one of the planners there was addressing the height issue. They're looking at how they're gonna, for sea level rise, address that. And I said to them, Hollywood has in certain areas a measurement for height that actually allows you to address it in terms of your base flood elevation and doesn't penalize you by raising your BFE. So all the time we're talking about other jurisdictions.
What are the best practices there?
It's one of the things, quite frankly, that ULI allows you to do and works really hard to pull best practices, not just from other jurisdictions here, but nationally.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can tell them about the windows that you're doing at the main, how it's like floor to ceiling, and how they went to Denver and saw it there, and they came back
That's
and
true.
incorporated that.
That it's one of the
12 foot.
yes, with
12
12
foot, yeah.
floor ceilings, and they looked at other office product being built in. They looked at the Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, I know, and some other things, yes, in Denver as well. And what are unique features that are being done there and incorporated into our design downtown.
Yeah, what we've got here.
Yeah, so Palm Beach County has what's called workforce housing. Lenore works hand in hand with the county to offer workforce housing to people in the workforce. In exchange, the county offers a subsidy to the developer or the homeowner. Does Broward have any plans on doing that going forward, as far as not necessarily offering subsidies, but building in, let's say, future opportunity zones and somehow limiting the cost on that?
We're trying.
Wait. Okay, so there's a couple of things there, and I'm strangely familiar with the Palm Beach inclusionary zoning requirements, which, by the way, I think are some of the worst ways to do it. Palm Beach County adopted you incorporated a percentage, or you do a payment in lieu. That payment in lieu was actually, until recently, cheaper than the cost to that residential developer to actually build the affordable units, so they were writing the checks, and we'll come back to that because Lenore just did something very smart going into that issue. But they just, Palm Beach, the problem I have with that form of inclusionary zoning is that it's kind of like hurting the doctor for finding the cure. The residential developer is the one providing additional housing, and you're putting that burden only on the residential development. Fundamentally unfair, and all it does is increase the cost of housing for everybody else. Doesn't make any sense. It's why Dan and I and a group of my compatriots in the development legal community went to the county administrator some time ago and said, if you're going to move towards inclusionary zoning, make it a linkage fee where the entire community shares this responsibility. This is not something that just residential developers should have to, but the whole community should. Every building permit that somebody gets, if you want to tack on a fee, we'll get the development community, like Jessica raising, behind it. Now, as an aside, we took that a step further recently, now that the Broward County has an affordable housing trust fund, and there is a move within the Broward Workshop and others to get the county to have a dedicated increase in the millage of something like 0.2 mils, which would raise about $30 million a year that could be dumped into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So with that said, what Arvida did, which I think, not Arvida, Lennar did, that I thought was really interesting was, were you involved with that, the affordable housing? They went to the county and other developers and said, we're gonna build an affordable housing development and we'll meet your responsibilities for you. So they kind of pooled that responsibility among a bunch of residential developers. That development, I don't know if it was for sale or rental, I just don't remember, but, pardon?
For sale.
It was for sale. It sold out before you broke ground or something crazy like that. And people were lined up for it. So Broward
It's out
County.
of control.
Yeah, well, because people are hungry for affordable housing. Broward County is not addressing this. Broward County is going to have to do something to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I hope, and I think we, as members of the development community and the public sector, want that responsibility to be shared by the entire community and not just stick it to the residential developer, which is the historical way it's been done. It's just not fair.
In Broward County, part of the issue of affordable housing, when you do a land use change, the code kicks in if you do 100 units or more of increased density. You do 99, you don't have to deal with affordable housing. When Debbie says we went to the administrator, it was, you can raise money on every building permit that's pulled. Everybody. You can have the townhouse community that's being built with 30 townhouses in it. It doesn't have to deal
Or
with
a CVS.
or CVS, whatever, but have everybody participate. What the county's doing now, and this is real time, real life, they're doing, now that they passed their penny sales tax for transportation, they're going to start taking what were pre-programmed transportation dollars, re-augment them to housing dollars. There are things called CRAs, community redevelopment agencies. The county is going to start sunsetting those after their 30 years are over, which means the TIF dollars, the tax dollars that now go into the cities is coming back to the county, and they're going to program that into some of it, into housing dollars. At least that's what they're saying. Our city's going to give them up so quickly? We'll see. The administrator says what she wants, and I'm going to be about 2 months from now, I'm the next president of the Broward League of Cities. So I have a feeling I'll be having a few more conversations with everybody about this conversation. But it's trying to get smart on how we do what we do. We're behind the 8 ball. We didn't plan enough historically to deal with the problem we have today, and now we're trying to retrofit, just like we are with transportation. We let things happen, and now we're trying to fix a problem. The problem is we have to play catch up. That's the tough part.
So I will take a quick break to actually thank you, Jessica, for coming today. During your speech, thank you for coming here today and helping us. It's just
Thank you so much.
And if you have follow-up questions with Jessica, her her bio is posted on our page. She is an advisory board member. Some of you are mentees of her. Thank you very much for your time. Say thank you
Enjoy
for
your Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Say thanks to the family that we could actually get you for a few hours here on
Thank
Sunday.
you.
That also means you have about an hour time to keep grilling those two guys and ask them for war stories and other experiences.
Let me say this before we go there, and hopefully you've come to know, I'm not your normal elected official. I try not to be. I don't believe I am. I try to do what I think is right regardless. I do things that are not, I try to do as much outside of the box compared to conventional thinking. Of course, to me it's important. And it is about community for everybody. People who want to make Broward County home, whether it's Weston, whether it's Pompano, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's Hollandale, wherever. But we need to, regardless of the 31 cities, those are invisible boundaries between the 1.8 million people that currently call Broward County home. How do we as a community, a larger community, move forward on social issues, on housing issues, on transportation issues, holistically? And it's not about NIMBYism. It's just about how do we plan our future in a way that, yeah, the guy who runs a day aside in Western Broward County that has very affluent zip codes in it is busy talking about affordable housing and transportation. And most people, she'll tell you, most people look at me and go, you shouldn't care about those things. I go, wrong idea. Okay, so it's, you can't only look at a zip code and say this is what somebody believes. That's a misnomer. So I spend too many times fighting with people about things I believe in. Of course, there's a strong social justice component in what I do. And it's just trying to get it right. So, sorry. I'll get off my soapbox. Yes, ma'am? You had a question? No? Okay. Yes, ma'am?
How do you do a change of use? Like in case you want to have more affordable houses, maybe the houses have to be smaller. So let's say you have a land and you think you could do a project for more affordable houses that you would need to change the use. Is that possible?
There are ways to, yes. To come in and do a land use change is not, one, a cheap proposition, and two, you then have awoken the people that surround that parcel and what's their tolerance for it. I'm one of those that tries not to listen to the outside influences if I think it's right, particularly social media. And right about now I'm getting called every four-letter named whatever because I would support a park and ride being put on the entrance of I-75 and Royal Palm Boulevard, and people say, we're too good for that. That's what they're saying.
Have they said, oh, and you're going to bring those people?
Those people are coming, and this, that, and the other thing, and I'm sorry that to me, my last city commission meeting, I nearly barfed on my things because I was never so sick of my community and things people say. It's disgusting. And you know what? We may have a really pretty picture of who we are, but I'm sorry. There are things that are being said that literally I have no tolerance for, and it's disgusting.
In getting at what you were saying, though, about how you change the use, let me give you a for instance, which is one of the ones that I'm really proud of, because it's totally side of the angels. The Broward Partnership for the Homeless is an organization that was started 20 years ago. It was a response to an encampment in downtown Fort Lauderdale that the public got together, and people like Wayne Huizinga and Terry Stiles and others, and funded with Broward County support the construction of what was then a 200-bed homeless shelter. It's now 230, its model has changed, a lot of things are different, and about 3 years ago, the chair of that, Dodie Keith Laswick, who's a engineer planner person, came to me and said, you know, we're being pushed to do housing first is the federal model for dealing with homeless people. And we can't find housing out there. We have a network of realtors who are helping us find them, but we can't find them. We should build our own housing. What do you think? Would you come on our board and explore this? Well, so let me announce one of the things I'm like so proud of. We took the parking lot of the Broward Partnership site, it's just on the south side of Sunrise Boulevard and Northwest 7th Avenue. It is currently approved for 72 affordable housing units. We got it through the city for approval. We had to rezone it. We had to have Broward County convey the dirt, the parking lot, to the Broward Partnership. Partnership is partnering with an affordable housing developer called Green Mills. We applied for, in February, a Florida Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Award, and we were ranked #1 last week by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. We should know, I'm knocking wood, by middle of April if we have secured that funding, and we will start building affordable units. The community surrounding it, which is a very working class residential community, the night that we had to go to our community meeting about the rezoning and everything else, and we described it and we invited all of the community partners, and we're sitting in the cafeteria of the Broward Partnership of the Homeless. And by the way, that development, more than 50% of the residents of that development are going to be earning less than 30% of AMI. The balance will be less than 60%. But it is basically for homeless people while they're still getting supportive, it's permanent supportive housing for homeless people. And the hardest thing to permit. The president of the Civic Association, Progresso Village, with all this development going on around it, Ron Centimore, who unfortunately passed away just a few weeks ago. And he said to me, you know, Deb, we realized when that first affordable housing development came into our neighborhood that those people are just like us. I really fell off my chair. It was just the most heartwarming thing. And the next thing you know, we had all of these people, all of whom, by the way, could probably afford to live in this development, shaking their heads and saying, that's fine, bring us new neighbors. That is an unheard of experience. I would go to the city commission, and before, I didn't have to get out of my chair other than to say, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for supporting the project. Because there is a community commitment, and we fortunately had a neighborhood that said, you've been a good partner. We like the Broward Partnership. We think you going into a housing model is a great idea.
Unlike another project that Debbie's working on. Okay, that's trying to do the right thing in a part of Fort Lauderdale that wants no part of it. Not in my back. This community is not in my backyard. No, get the heck out.
Actually, it went worse. It goes in with the, I can't believe people are saying this at a public meeting. We actually had someone stand up opposing, this is for the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. They are doing a low-income housing development in an area south of downtown on the west side of Federal Highway. It's been in the newspaper. Don't believe everything you've read in the newspaper. I came on the team in November when it hit the fan and was asked to help because of my expertise in affordable housing and homeless issues, because it's not a homeless shelter and everybody's getting the impression it was. But we actually had someone stand up at a public meeting and say the following: why are you putting so many poor people so close to us rich people? And I stood there, and you don't respond to that. That's where the poker face steps in. After the meeting, I had the planning director for the city of Fort Lauderdale come up to me and say, I'm embarrassed for our community. Tell us what we can do to help you. I had the city attorney, the city manager, and the mayor all come and say, we have to figure out a way to make this project work. And it's a give and take. Watch it unfolding. There'll be more newspaper articles in May. So affordable housing is very tough. Now, as an aside, there is another affordable housing development coming in the neighborhood where the same group of people are saying, and theirs is a tax credit project, so it's 60% and below. And the neighborhood is again saying, why in my neighborhood? Excuse me, these are the people who are valeting your car at the yacht club. This is the person who's taking care of your children in the after-school program. I think part of the difficulty we have is that the face of affordability in this community is wrong.
People again, it comes back to people think affordable housing means homeless people. It doesn't. But there's an old perception that that's what it is, and it's not. And that's part of, is it a marketing game? Is it an education? Marketing, I don't say that in a negative sense. It's how do you rebrand so people understand when you say affordable housing, you're not talking about the folks that just got moved out of downtown Fort Lauderdale from in front of the library that I think they now put up a 10-foot wall so you can't get near the library, so people can't
It's under construction.
But so people can't get back there.
It's under construction.
Or what the county did a few years ago by taking a vacant parcel and planting all kinds of stuff on it in Broward Boulevard so people couldn't live on it. I'm saying, the city. Or they took the park and put a fence around it and planted the crap out of it, which looks like a jungle, which to me doesn't even look nice, but they did it for a reason of keeping homeless people out of the park. So it's how do we deal with that problem? And it's a societal problem. There's a difference between, we can get into, mental health issues. There are lots of reasons why people may be homeless. Could be veterans, could be mentally ill, could be, so there's not one person, or there's not one type of person that you may be talking, or family, because there's lots of families that need help with regard to housing. So affordable housing is a name that, or a title that is so misunderstood, that's part of our jobs is to try to explain, it's not Section 8 housing, using a New York term. It's not what that is. It's how do we deal with a host of issues in our community.
Here and then back there, yeah.
So, I'm just listening, I understand the need for it. So, us as future developers, how do we go find more information? What's available to us? Whenever we're looking at, hey, is this actually gonna work? Like from our perspective, right, are there incentives? Are there, how does that work? It's a lot of it, I understand the need to do it for the right reasons, but also how do we make the pro formas work and what resources are available?
Well, it's interesting because we're having that discussion. I chair the City of Fort Lauderdale's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. And a couple of months ago, actually it was last summer, our committee had a joint meeting with the City Commission. We put forth 6 recommendations to them to help facilitate the development of affordable housing and rehabilitation of some of the housing stock because it is more affordable. We don't really deal with our present housing stock to rehab it very well either. The City Commission has tasked the city's Department of Sustainable Development to work with our committee to implement things. So the city actually, the city staff has been presenting to us each month different changes that they are putting into the zoning code. So one of the things that they are doing, and this is something that builds on the Planning Council's work under Broward Next, you can't have an accessory unit. It's called an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. They have been verboten. It's the guest house in the back.
It's the granny flat.
It's the granny flat, whatever.
They're back.
But now, the Broward County land use plan permits you to have an additional ADU, and it does, even though you're in an area that would not permit that density. The county is saying, cities, we think you need to encourage the development of ADUs. The city of Fort Lauderdale said, we want to embrace that. They are amending their land use plan and their zoning code to figure out how to implement that. Now, think about it. You live in an established single-family neighborhood. I'm thinking about the neighborhood that I live in right now, which is called Victoria Park, where the typical lot, single-family lot, I don't live in a single family, but the typical single-family lot is 50 feet by 130 feet, because that's what it was platted in 1922. Most of those homes have built McMansions on them now that are narrow, 2 stories, and go far back, because your front setback is 25 feet, your side's 15, but you've got plenty of room in the rear. Well, what if I had an older home, still a lot of older homes there, that is built closer to the street, and I had this huge backyard? I could build an ADU. I can't wait to hear what the the Victorian Park Civic Association is gonna say, City of Florida, bless you, you are sneezing on the truth. When they say, oh, we're gonna allow you to increase the density and you can add a unit in the back. And by the way, those older neighborhoods also have 15-foot platted alleys, so you can even access that house, that ADU from the rear. Now, that ADU would have to be income restricted in order to get it, because again, it's not just build it and make it more expensive. But what that allows to happen is, it's a twofer. You're building an affordable unit, but you're also making the living expenses for the person in that single family home more affordable, because they're either renting or they've sold a piece of their dirt which they couldn't otherwise sell. So we are slowly picking away at making sure that the numbers can work for everybody.
So here's a question: in Texas, for tax purposes, with the new ADU rule, would you be still in a single-family home on the same property, homestead exempt
Yes,
for your tax purposes?
absolutely.
And the ADU is running a separate meter, gas, water, utilities extensions?
Expectation would be, they haven't worked that out yet, but
Because
it's,
that was kind of a fine print line back then when I used to work in Boise, Idaho, because there has been a lot of those, not just on top of the garage, but there's literally like this one bedroom apartment backyard shack,
Yeah.
but the kitchen was maybe shared with the main residency. So there was
this would
always
be a completely separate unit, they'd have a separate tax folio number.
cool.
So it'd be completely single family.
It could be.
Part of what also is happening is not only are we trying to deal with that issue, we also have, as a community, we're trying to catch up with how to deal with our parents. And this sounds wrong, but what do we do with our parents as they age? And I'm saying, it comes out sounding wrong, but you want them closer. You don't want them further away, you want to bring them closer. And as a community, we haven't necessarily built facilities in our community, we're now doing it to play catch up. But what you're also finding is you're finding more and more families, some of them out by me, who have big homes and now empty nesters. Kids are gone, oh, mom and dad just moved in. Okay, so you're now finding homes that have 3 generations in them, in what may be a 4,000 square foot home that just mom and dad live there. Sally and Johnny went off to college and are now married, and does mom and dad need the 4,000 square foot home? Mom and dad just moved in. So it's doing things differently than we've ever thought as well, which is an interesting, because that's how do we deal with our older population and have them age in place. That's happening too. The young lady in the back did, yeah.
Actually, every time I hear the conversation about affordable housing, I cringe a little bit, because I feel like we do not talk about the big elephant in the room, which is like, as much as we hate to admit it, the cost of living is going high and your pay remaining the same. So look at the big disasters that we're going with the retail industry. Like about Gap is closing, all of those is closing. All of those people will need affordable housing. We need to stop talking, okay, we need affordable housing. We need to work with our community, work with our government to limit the impact of this is having, because not calling affordable housing period and call people need to be a place to live, because things are changing and we have to adapt. And every time people keep saying like, not in my neighborhood, not in my neighborhood. But what is this? Let's say you were a retail manager at a store, you're about to lose your job. What you going to do? So stop talking about affordable housing in a way.
Yeah,
Stop naming it like that.
But there's certain, but that's what I'm saying. The name has an older connotation, but that's what it is, and we're trying to change it to whether it's workforce housing, attainable housing,
Cost burden.
We're trying, and it's.
There's a great report that the United Way publishes. It's called the ALICE report, ALICE. And it stands basically, I don't remember what it says, but it basically says people who are spending more than 30% of their take home on housing costs. But it analyzes it nationwide and for our community.
In the next 10 years, we will face that.
Yeah.
But listen, here's part of the premise of what you said. There's only so much government can do, because our economy is changing at light speed.
Yes.
And
We need to adapt.
but the problem is, some of it is and the big them out there are talking, then all the noise you hear out there, and you're gonna hear it out for the next 2 years, the noise of how do we move as a country? Local government can only do so much of that.
Yeah.
Local government.
Yeah.
We are moving at light speed. Listen, this sounds bad, but every time something bad happens in the economy for my business, I work for a management consulting firm that deals with distressed companies, and I generally put them through bankruptcy or into receivership in some form of liquidation. So while the economy's booming, my business is really slow. So, not that I'm forecasting that I'd love something bad to happen, but it's good for my business, because that's what I do for a living. But part of it is, our economy is changing, and some of it's really scary.
Very much.
Really scary. I'm one of those, and Debbie knows this. You know, my kids say, "Daddy, you got this phone that does all these things?" Yeah, I said, "It's a phone. I make a call on it, I get a text on it, I send an email on it. But you can do this, this, this." I said, "It's a phone." I used to have one, and a rotary phone. They don't even know what it is.
Yep.
I do.
So as we change in our economy, sure, we do have to
Yeah.
deal with things, but part of that will then come into the redevelopment that Jessica and Debbie are gonna do. When you get the strip shopping center where a whole bunch of places went out, how do you now take that and make it a mixed-use, redevelopable parcel that has retail downstairs, commercial, and residential in it, and make it all go? That's what you're gonna see more of.
Yeah.
So it's doing that as well.
We have a lot of, come back, it's right there and then here and then there.
When you brought up the commerce category for the Broward County amendment, do you know which particular cities actually would be more lenient on that? Because you said the cities also have their own rules, so the overhang is Broward County amendment for the retail strip centers.
Okay, so let me first explain that Broward County, under the Broward County Charter, the Broward County Commission is the final decision maker as to land uses and intensities of use, even in the cities. The board that you notice Dan's rolling his eyes, that's a decision that was made in this community in 1976, for better or for worse. Nobody's been able to take on the county. And Dan would lose his favorite last Thursday of the month meeting at the planning council, because the planning council is the city's representatives in the county process, that they then make a recommendation to the county commission. So the county's put in place commerce, the mixed use and affordable housing stuff that's been built into the commerce category will go to the county commission, I guess, probably in April. I suspect there'll be like no discussion other than Senator Commissioner Nan Rich saying, "Yay, we're doing something about affordable housing." God bless Nan. Okay. The cities are now, we have 31 municipalities. I don't think there is one city that has implemented the Broward Next changes to the overriding land use plan, and all the cities are just starting to do that today. Broward Next was implemented last year? Yeah, about a year and a half ago. The cities are now saying, "Ooh, we need to amend it." The cities don't even have a commerce category in their land use plans yet.
We may have an IOC, industrial, office and commercial.
Yep.
On a county, it's all been collapsed. So the cities still have to play now catch up. We may have subcategories where county, it's all just one meeting.
So I can give you my impression. I think that cities like, the city of Fort Lauderdale is setting the stage for 80 to 100, if not unlimited, use. They'll restrict density in the commerce category, I suspect, by height, setback, parking standards, which constrain how much you can put in that 5-pound bag. Other cities, like the city of Hollywood, is going to say, we don't really want any density over 50 units to the acre. They may or may not say that, but they're more sensitive. What will the city of Miramar do with that? I don't know. But the East Coast cities tend to be more comfortable with the greater densities along their transit corridors, in part because, A, they already have greater density in so many places. They've used regional activity centers to get unlimited density in many areas. And they already have some existing transit that with the penny is only going to get better. So to give you a, for instance, I'm doing a commerce type, we're anticipating in a city, and I can't tell you where, it's not public yet, a 20-acre antiquated shopping center that's half empty. It's the poster child. Client came to me and said, I need to revitalize this. This is a national retail developer. We think we could do a mixed-use development here. It's on Federal Highway, which has as good a transit as you get in Broward County today. We don't know how to get there. And I went, you know, the county has this thing coming down the pipe. I think would work for you. So I've been monitoring that for that client, which is why I walked into his meeting, walked in, sat down, they grouped, I walked out.
I look at the next thing, she's got, what you got?
Oh, out of here. And we met with the city that is saying we are 2 years away from having a Broward Next implementation at our mid-city plan. So we evaluated with them, they have two categories, that one is a transit-oriented development that we think could work for this parcel, and the other is their local activity center that may or may not work for other reasons. And the city's gonna get back to us and say, they don't want us to wait 2 years for them to have a plan in place. They know they don't wanna wait. They want this center to redevelop. They want the economic development, they want the new units. Now, by the way, at least 15% of those, probably anywhere from 400 to 500 units, are going to be income restricted, some level of affordable. So, I think we had, where were we? No, we're there, and then
You had mentioned a project before about the issues with the flood stuff, and
Yes.
you said it was controversial, so I was just curious, like, what was controversial about it?
it was putting a building in somebody else's view, and they didn't like it.
So,
There's no legal right to a view, I won, it's under construction.
well, it's funny you say that because.
That hearing got over at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know what jurisdiction it
Oh, I
was.
do.
I sat there going to the client, put a fork in my eye, I can't do this anymore, I'm done.
I live in Sunny Isles, and there's a lot of people that
Ah.
complain about that, all the stuff going on. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
I was just curious how.
Where else
it's
did you
controversial
have?
and how it
Young
gets
lady
looked.
in the red.
Oh, yes. And then-
Right, okay. My goodness, I forgot my thing, but anyway, just backtracking, I think, I was just piggybacking on what she was saying. So I'm thinking, I noticed that, here in America that, you know, people are very tied up with like square footage and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just look at the Swiss, you know, how they live. I mean, it is so, like transitional, you know, they're willing to like have multi-uses for different spaces, you know, like a smaller sort of setup and things like that. Because I really don't think, I think Americans like live above, you know, their means in terms of having this big old house and not being able to afford it. So I think if, you know, they built smaller spaces, even along the lines of like apartments upstairs, you know, like commercial buildings, I mean, not as expensive as the one she has probably. But I mean, in that view, I think, you know, we'd be better off.
Let me say, and I'm gonna come back to use the phrase because it's today, when we talk about affordable units today.
Right.
There are conversations going on about micro units.
Right.
There are conversations going on about taking containers
Right.
and converting them.
Okay.
There is prefab houses that that we're talking about. There's nothing we're not trying to consider
Okay.
on how to do things. But that's a piece of the issue. There's a national conversation going on, and I'll get political for half a second, as to where some people think we should be going compared to where other people think we've been and where they're going. Part of the beauty of who we are as a community of Broward, we have choices. And there is something for everybody. The question is it where you want it to be? So there are the bigs and there are the smalls. I'm talking homes, not
Right.
incomes. There are those too. But you have choices. There will be more choices. But you know what? I'm not one of those that says if you make it, you should, you can't keep it. And certain communities are who they are. other older communities are changing who they are in some respects. The question becomes, you're all a lot younger than the two of us. What do you want? What does my 27-year-old, my 24-year-old, or my 20-year-old want by way of housing? With regard to, do they want to be married? Do they want to have kids? Do they want to have cars? Do they want to, what do they want? I'm not sure you all have the answer yet, because I don't think you do. I think you're all running, believe, there's a lot of social issues going on, there's a lot of thought, but I'm not sure things sound good. You know what it's like living in 700 square feet? Really, you know what it's like living in 700? I mean, you're talking a postage stamp.
Okay, wait a second. But you're a student. There's a difference. Listen, but I'm saying there's a different when you're a professional or working, and is that? Dorm, listen. I gotta jump in here. Couple of things.
So-
Number one, go to the IKEA in Sunrise.
That's where I was going
Now,
with this.
I have been set,
Been there, done that.
the affordable housing development I'm doing that's been so controversial, part of the controversy is that it's micro units. They range in size from 263 square feet to 410. And the 263, we have a mock-up, which is very similar to the one that's at the IKEA store. And by the way, you can also find it online. IKEA has you can do a 360 in there. And all of these people who said to me, what is this micro unit? Does it even have a kitchen? And I went, when they see the unit, they go, I've lived in less of this when I lived in Boston. I lived in less, okay, that's hit number one. Hit number two, one of the things that had to change in order for Flagler Village and downtown Fort Lauderdale to happen was the minimum size of a unit. Not as a building code, as a zoning code matter. We had to make the permitted minimum size less. Because it used to be you couldn't have a one-bedroom apartment that was less than 750 square feet. My son and daughter-in-law live in DC. They live in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 989 square foot home that they advised me the first and a half grandchild will be born and live in that house. Where they'll put the kid with the 2 cats, I'm not sure. But one of the things that they do is and we're doing this in it's a development trend that's very interesting. As the units have gotten smaller, the amenities that are provided in the development have changed. There's more space for people to gather outside of their home, still in their building. That's thing number one. Forest City, major national developer, was first unveiling micro units in San Francisco. This is going back a number of years ago. And fortunately at ULI, I heard a presentation from the developer of this, and he said the first thing they do when they're doing a micro unit development is they survey a quarter mile around the site they're considering to see if there's a grocery, a coffee shop, a hangout place, a bar, because if they don't have those gathering places within a quarter mile, they put them in their project. Instead of having a big lobby, they have a coffee bar. Because we're people that, we're tribal. And we like to be with other people, at least for the most part. We need places where we can communicate and gather and all that. And if you're in a smaller unit, we used to do it in our homes. Very few people entertain in their homes anymore. That's not the way I grew up. That's not the way, for the first probably 30 years of my married life, we socialized. Today, people, because spaces are smaller and the opportunity to get out is bigger, we're dealing with it.
So, because even like with the advent of the tiny homes and, things like that, I think people have like too much stuff. And they need to just like get rid of their stuff and just have, live. Just live.
But this is a real estate class. Let's go back to make some really nice
But here's the interesting thing. My daughter, who's a doctoral student over in the PT building, 3 buildings that way, who wears gray every day because that's what the PT students wear. My ex-wife is selling our home. And she's going to close next month. Now, I'm in a 4-bedroom townhouse, so each of my kids has a room. My daughter called me yesterday and said, Daddy, I need to bring all my stuff over. Now, in her bedroom now, she's got 2 double-wide closets in her mother's house. She doesn't have that at Daddy's house. And she says, Daddy, what am I gonna do? She goes, I'm gonna bring over my stuff, and for a little while, it may be all over the place until I get a chance to put it away. So talking about space, I got one of those, and she's warning me of what's coming. There's a part of me that says, honey, when you move out of my house and move wherever you're going to go next, you gotta downsize the amount of your stuff, because not every place has closets big enough for you. And I said, I'm gonna get rid of half her stuff anyway, because she doesn't know it yet, but that's what's gonna happen. But you're talking about space. When you have space, people accumulate stuff.
Right, exactly.
And part of it becomes a pro forma of, okay, how much are people willing to spend to buy that space? There are folks out in our community, okay, go to Wyndham, okay, the most affluent part of our community. There are folks taking homes that are 25 years old today, knocking them down and building them. Happening today. It's happening. Now, they can afford to do it. You know, in the Bonaventure part of our community, the old section, one of the golf courses is now building a community called Botanica. Botanico is being done by Terra Group, David Martin, who's done some really remarkable stuff. They're building houses starting at $1.7 million.
Well, and ending at 2.8.
Affordable.
Affordable.
Focusing on the international buyer. People said when we permitted that development, the rest of the community is not like that. I looked at it and said, that's going to be part of the kickstart to redevelop and redo the Bonaventure part of our community. I'm looking forward of, at some point, that golf course community, that Botanical will get built, the surrounding community in Bonaventure will rise to that standard, which will then cause the Arvida section of Weston to have to redevelop itself to catch up. So I'm trying to create a long-term vision of how does it keep spiraling up as compared to spiraling down. That's just my wacky way of planning.
Except getting back to
So
development aspects of this, one of the things I couldn't bring today for other reasons is a development that I can talk about, but I can't show pictures yet. Who's been to the Isles Casino in Pompano? And the racetrack there?
Racetrack, yeah.
Okay, and you know how those big parking lots and those wide open spaces around it? That site is about 230 acres. And for those of you not familiar with it, it's bounded on the east by the CSX Railroad. Hold that thought because it's important to what I'm going to tell you. On the west by Power Line, which is a state road that's about to get a complete streets makeover. On the south by a residential development that's got about 2,000 units. And on the north, a Walmart and industrial stuff. To the, further to the west of it, on the other side of Power Line, is this small community called Palm Air.
Golf course.
Which, starting in the 1970s, had 5 golf courses. We have successfully, it's down to 2, maybe 3 now, redeveloped the north course. That was one of the case studies I did in another class here, for 900 units of residential. But basically, Palm Air has 20,000 residents. Probably 2/3 of them now are full-time. Used to be a very seasonal, it's less seasonal in part because Palm Air is an affordable housing community without the labels because it's where people can afford to live. And they can get bigger space. You can get a 3-bedroom, it's an older unit, 1,800 square feet for less than $200,000. You buy that, you invest and fix it up, blah, blah, blah. So, getting back to the Isles Casino. A year ago, El Dorado Resorts, which owns the casino and the racetrack, goes to the Cordish Company, which is a major developer out of the Northeast, and joint ventures. All of this is public, so I can talk about it. And they recognize that the harness racing is going the way of dog tracks, and they want a redevelopment proposal. We are having a pre-application meeting on the redevelopment of that 230 acres. It will become a 230-acre transit-oriented development.
Cool.
Sounds strange, doesn't it, guys? It's a mixed-use development. It already has its land use in place for anywhere from 3.5 to 4 million square feet of office, industrial, commercial recreation, 1,300 residential units, not quite enough, we're gonna increase that. But when the client came to us with this proposal and said, what do you think? And I went, what a great location for a tri-rail station. And everybody kind of went, excuse me? I said, well, if people work here, by the way, they're planning between 1 million and 2 million square feet of office, a couple of thousand residential units. What are you looking at me?
No, I'm just rolling my eyes. It was like dream numbers.
800 to 1,000. I'll come back next year with the plans.
Oh yeah.
800 to 1,000 hotel rooms, a corporate headquarters, and by the way, there's interest at the national level for all the things I'm describing to you from a market standpoint. The Tri-Rail station, we met with Tri-Rail and the MPO last week, and there's going to take some finessing, but we're going to figure it out. Part of the benefit, and the elected officials, we've been meeting with that entire commission. They're very excited about the proposal. The Palm Air community, which is civic activists on acid. There are a lot of the older people who have nothing better to do but to come to meetings, you know the type. But you know what? Those folks want a place to go out to dinner. They want a new grocery store because there aren't enough groceries in the area, major grocery complex. And they have a circulator system that could connect through our circulator and get them to a tri-rail station where they would be able to get to down by 2020. They will be able to get, maybe 2021. They'll be able to get to downtown Miami because tri-rail is connecting all the way into Miami Central Station, which is the Bright Line connection there. So all of this, we also had a conversation with the MPO that there is money available for autonomous vehicles as your on-site circulator. And we're having those discussions. This is community building. But part of what we're doing is changing the dialogue. This is not just a new development. This is a transit-oriented development. It will have at least 15% of the new units will be at the county's affordable levels, which go up to 120% of area median income. And it's going to come before him, so we can't speak about it, although maybe you could.
Bring it on.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that the district commissioner for Palm Air said is we're going to have to educate our folks about what this means to them. A lot of positives. You know, change is always scary. But he said it's going to increase their property values and it will get that community to upgrade their public areas. That's what Dan was just saying about how Botanica will raise up the rest of Bonaventure. One of the things that people often forget or are unwilling to accept is that redevelopment, particularly on the scale of the things we're talking about, changes the character of an entire area and it lifts it up. You know, rising tide lifts all boats. That's what happens with development. Now, the flip side of that in urban redevelopment is you get gentrification questions and displacement. That's not really going to be the issue in either of these places because the people who are already there already own their property. So, for the most part. So, you know, you don't have that same kind of gentrification that you might get in other areas. But this will be one that I'm happy to share ultimately as a case study. If it, you know, if it all goes the way it's supposed to go, it's very exciting. I never knew how to permit a tri-rail station until yesterday, and day before yesterday, and that was an exciting thing for me. You know, 40 years into a career.
But before Bruce goes along, Mars or Marcy? Mars?
Yes,
Yeah.
Marcy.
But you mentioned about the Swiss context, so as a European in the room, and then transit-oriented. Just to give you an idea of how different regions think differently about planning and redevelopment and real estate development.
Right.
I've been to Singapore 16 years ago. Yeah, 2003. So 16 years ago. New town development in Singapore was place a metro station, subway or a light rail in the middle of the new development, shopping center around it, and then 300,000 people residential in density, usually like 10, 15 floors high, depending on what they like almost looks like the projects, but it's high end back then. Yeah, that's how they conceptualized their growth. As in, wherever we're going to dedicate land into residential land use, transit and commerce needs to be first in place and then we build around it. But, well, it's a centralized planning authority there, so it's a different market than we experience here in the US. But that's the reason why I bring up this example. You're talking TOD, and boom, what do you think about TOD? What are the different modes you implement there? So it's not just cars and pedestrians. We got to think different ways of lower mass transit and then really mass transit. We can't really get the New York City metro down here.
We do it backwards here.
Yeah.
We're sitting in
I formulated it slightly.
We're sitting in the town of Davie. How many of you were here before the redo of 595? Before the redo, okay? That was a really hard road to drive on. Really, really hard. I was the chair of the MPO when that project came forward. The Florida Department of Transportation says we're going to do a P3. Never been a P3 done here before. $1.2 billion project. County Commissioner, now State Representative Kristen Jacobs, who sat on the MPO, said, not happening, and I went, bullshit, we're getting this done. Part of the redo of 595, one which makes car traffic move better, was there was also supposed to be a mass transit component. There was supposed to be a train. Now, granted, the train may be 20 years away, now less, but it was projected-wise. There's supposed to be a train. The town of Davie didn't want the train on the south side of it because it's closer to the town of Davie. This town still fights that development, but I ensured when we did the project and fought for it, in the envelope is still the right-of-way to do a train. When the roadway was getting designed, the original design that first came through with the Spanish team that won the award was they wanted to put the rail upstairs. And I said, God forbid you have an accident, something bad happens. How do you get up there? Literally. Whatever, if you double decker 595, whatever's upstairs is a major catastrophe. And we finally convinced them at the moment to stay away from that. But we are planning our future that when we do things today and we do it smart, we at least save the space that allows for that to happen. This community, and I pick on them a lot, and that's okay, they love their horses, but imagine the economic development that could go on along State Road 84 from 136th Street to Sawgrass Technology Park, which is where the end of the train would go, the BB&T, down and along here. Imagine what redevelopment would occur, and oh, by the way, yeah, it was going to come into Nova Southeastern University. Okay, the lake that now has the apartment complex on it, at the northeast corner, basically, where the Wawa is and the park and ride, that was a lake, right?
Used to be, yeah.
Now it's house, right?
Yeah.
Well, originally, that was land.
It was land, then they dug
Ron
it out.
Bergeron dug it up to create the gravel to build the original 595 on.
Then they
That's
filled
where
it
the
back
bed
in.
of the road came from. And now they filled it back in and created new land, new property values. How do we be smart to plan for our future? That's why I say we're trying to be smarter about how we do it. We got what we got. How do we retrofit it?
We are doing something. I've permitted for Brightline the Fort Lauderdale station, and included in the station plan and the track at the station is already there, is the coastal link that Dan talked about. You only needed you only need the extra track right at the station, and it's already in there. By the way, there's also room for a pedestrian bridge over the track that goes directly to what is today the county bus station, which will, I believe, ultimately be a new county, maybe with or without the city. I'm not sure they can ever get it dead that much. But it'll be a new government center, right at a transit hub. These things are probably, 10, 15, you guys will enjoy them.
Yeah.
We're gonna be, living, I think the British Virgin Islands is where I decided now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't decided where.
So I go by boat to dinner.
Young man, you in the back. You had a. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
As far as the tax credits go, how much funding from, I guess, you call it the housing finance agency?
Florida Housing Finance Corporation.
How do they go about funding the housing finance corporation? How do they decide how much money?
Federal money.
Federal money. Okay, so how do they decide how much money goes into these housing finance agencies?
I don't know how the federal government allocates tax credits and that funding to the various states, but every state gets a certain allocation. And then each state is allowed to then come up with their own plan for the allocation of those funds and that tax credit. Well, actually, it's the tax credits that get allocated. The tax credits are then sold by the developer of the project to an investor who needs the tax credit for their corporate, to offset their corporate taxes.
I'm just more curious on, because those tax credits help with affordable housing. They help affordable housing to build. I'm under the impression that if we increase the tax credits for developers or for corporations, that would in return bring more affordable housing. Does it not work that way?
Well, yes and no. If there's more tax credits available, then there's more opportunity for an investor to buy the tax credits and invest in affordable housing units. The difficulty is the tax amendments, last year's tax bill, reduced the corporate tax rate from 35 to 19 or 21, I can't remember now. So that means that each tax credit is worth less to a potential investor. That doesn't mean there aren't a lot of investors out there who are still looking for tax credit deals. So
It's the marketplace to get the credits. There are folks fighting. There's a desire to have them. They just can't get them. There's certain deals you can't fund.
yeah.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
let me give you
how
a for
would we
instance.
increase the
The-
tax credits and then that in return will increase
Well,
affordable
it's
housing?
actually, it's yes and no, again. Let me use the BPHI project as an example. We're building 72 units. We may actually be able to bump that up to 80, I heard, financially. The limitation on the number of units was not a zoning issue. I had plenty of room to put in more than 100 units there. We couldn't get enough financing through the tax credit program and the sale program and the home program and the blah, 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 every layer that you do, because you have like 5 layers of financing on affordable housing, couldn't get enough money to fund the construction of more than 72 units.
Exactly.
Now, we also couldn't make the pro forma work from an operations standpoint because you're limited in what you can charge rent to the folks. So the bigger the project, the more your costs go up, your O&M. So where's that sweet spot? And it's a balancing act that actually the affordable housing developers have to do in order to formulate a pro forma. Affordable housing pro forma is very complicated.
Let me also, and it changes it a little, and Debbie actually said this before. There's a thought out there that affordable housing has to be built in new buildings. They have to be new construction. We have a significant number of single-family homes or older multi-family buildings that could be rehabbed. Structures there, take it down to the walls, to the studs, and redo it. Single-family homes that are in disrepair, that if you actually got it back from the current owner, some of them may be elected officials who have substandard housing. Shame on me, I shouldn't have said that, but they do. And improve that home, you could put families in there and make it affordable. So it's not necessarily about building new units. We have units strewn across this community that if you rehab them, we could solve a significant number of the crisis. And it's not expensive because there's no land cost. The house or the structure's there. So you're not starting from ground zero. And I try to say to folks, let's focus on rehab as a first step. Because the dirt is expensive. Okay, you don't have to buy the dirt. And she'll tell you, people look at me like I'm crazy.
No, there's a really, by the way, in Washington, D.C., there is a phenomenal adaptive reuse phenomena happening. They're taking 1980s office buildings and converting them to residential use. Now, they're doing that in part because those 1980s buildings are so obsolete. The floor, simple thing, the floors are not enough to put all the modern technology you need in a contemporary office building. You can't retrofit them, but if you do a change of use, and there's a huge affordable housing crisis in DC, like everywhere else, they also have a 30% inclusionary zoning requirement that, I think it's either 25 or 30%, which is amazing to me. But so they're converting old office buildings into residential units, which, by the way, are very often, keep in mind the metro system in DC was designed in the 1970s. So a lot of these office buildings are right on or near metro stations, so you got a twofer going on there. Yeah, follow up and then
Well, how much, I guess what's the pool, or the amount of funding, on the yearly funding for tax credits, or for that the Housing Finance Committee allocates for affordable housing? What is that number?
I don't know. I don't know the number. All I know is we just got $25 million worth, so I'm a happy camper. Yeah.
So, my question's two-part. So you mentioned earlier that, I think it was it Hollywood that has the lowest per capita, the list you.
Yeah, they have pretty low
Yeah.
AMI.
So then, in areas like that, you know, are those areas, do they receive priority in the programs? Is that on a municipality level, county level? How's that tackled? I know it's a messy question, but
I guess the best way to deal with the messy question is to say, there's something on that piece of land now, what does somebody want to do with it to redevelop it? And we're going, I mean, that becomes part of it is, where is that parcel located? What could it become? What's the community's tolerance? It becomes this whole, yeah.
Are you talking about the population? The residents?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
These are
Oh, sorry.
residents.
I missed it.
So I
Sorry.
think, okay, so
Admin.
it actually has a negative because the lower the municipal AMI, the less my developer folks want to build affordable housing there.
Sure.
Because the even lower the rents they're able to charge because of it, particularly if it's a tax credit development. So then you're driven by HUD standards. And HUD is very strict about using, depending on the program you're in, using either the AMI for the county or for the city, or there's also a thing called MFI, median family income, which is a much higher number, and it looks at the county more broadly. It depends upon the program which one they use.
so a follow-up to that, what's the minimum square footage that they look for?
They don't care. Whatever the building code and zoning code works.
Okay.
So I have a job here as also a timekeeper. So we officially exceeded the morning session's time. I know you dedicated a little bit more time, so I just want to make sure that we are going to end the session at some time. Maybe one or two more questions and then close it. I have one question out of those two questions. Besides, thank you. Most career-defining moment for you too, because when we reflect, our speakers coming in here, they gave a little bit of an overview of what they have done in their career, their work, the pros and cons. We didn't touch the worst case examples of your career, but as a takeaway, like lessons learned for students of this morning's sessions, what is your personal most defining moment in your career? Like, what is the project or the moment that you say, wow, I changed, or I had to take my path, or this is my personal success, or the defeat?
I'll give you a positive and a negative. Negative for me was a little over 2 years ago when the penny sales tax failed. I was the face of the penny sales tax in Broward County.
Sure.
She will tell you from 7 in the morning till 7 at night.
I felt so bad for him.
I ran to every corner, and I'm not saying others didn't, but if there was a face out there, it was me, good and bad. I had never lost anything before, ever. I had never lost an election. Still haven't lost an election. For me, that was resounding and disappointing because it was about trying to move the community. So that's to me one of my biggest failures, personally. Biggest accomplishment for me, and I'll give you one that's not related to this, but in some respects it is. When I was a prosecutor in the Bronx, I dealt with a murdering drug gang, killed 54 people in a 1 square block area in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx during the crack epidemic. When we started, kids were riding bicycles, delivering brown bags that had crack, and they weren't going to school. Mommy did it, brother, sister did it, people weren't going to school. It was a bad part of the neighborhood. When we were done prosecuting, kids were back on their bicycles, going to school, throwing footballs around. So it is about development. In some respects, it is about community. My proudest moment was to go back to that community, and everybody knew who the white guy in the blue suit, white shirt, and red tie was when something bad happened in the community, because I walked into the community and everybody knew who I was, to the point where there was a contract taken out of my life, and I didn't care. My biggest highlight was to look at the kids and have them back in their community, and parents be successful. So for me, it is about sense of place, giving them back their community, and we got rid of the bad guys. So it's not about elected life, but for that it was about just doing community work. But my biggest disappointment was losing sales tax effort 2 years ago. Yeah, and it just wasn't fun.
Well,
The most recent one was I had a charter amendment on last November to do away with term limits in the city of Weston. Weston's had one city manager. We're now going to be 23 years old. That city manager announced his retirement this year. My term ends November 2020. So the 2 people with the most institutional knowledge of our city and its operations are going to leave within a year of each other. We could have a significant change in our community and who we are. And to me, the commission unanimously put forth a charter question to do away with term limits. I don't want to stay, my name's not King Dan. But to me, we wanted to get through a transition into the future, at least for 1 more term. And based on politics and partisanship and the makeup of our community, some of them being Colombians and Venezuelans and what goes on in their home, and Republicans and Democrats, I got my butt kicked. Lost 3-1. That to me, and that took me weeks to get over. She'll tell you, I was an unhappy camper because I took it personally. And there were people who led the effort that will come up to me and say, this wasn't about you, we love you. It's just about the whole term limit issue. So Weston will, as a community, go through change. Change is inevitable, but when you take a city manager and the longest serving elected official out in the same year, now we'll see what resilience looks like as a community.
Thanks for sharing.
So it's that the November one for me. She'll tell you she called me and hurry you. Yeah, I was miserable.
So I'll start with the happy one, and because it was the turning point. In 1987, I was a partner with Greenberg Torek. We only had, at that time, the firm had 1 office, which was in Miami. It was starting to grow. I was living in downtown Fort Lauderdale. It helped, all I needed to do was be near a good airport. But I saw something happening in Broward County that I just felt that there was a future here. So I went to Mel Greenberg and Bob Torek, who, if you don't know who they are, Google both of them. 2 of the most amazing people I've ever had the opportunity to get to know and to work with. And they are they're icons in the Miami community and the development world. So I went into Mel's office first and said, I'm thinking we opened a Fort Lauderdale office, we've got 2 or 3 people there, I live 2 minutes from there. I think there's a future for my practice in Broward County. I was doing a little bit of dabbling in Broward at that point. And Mel said to me, call me when you need an associate. 6 months later, by the way, I called him and said I need to hire an associate. And the associate I hired actually was Peter Henk. That same day, though, I went to Bob Trorig's office and said to Bob, I'm thinking of going to Broward. Now, I was Bob's right-hand person. I would set him up for hearings, we would work closely together, and he said to me, go climb another mountain. There was no land use practice in Broward County for my firm, and I had the two people supporting me, investing in me, which is really important in your career to have people like that. But I was also being brave. And I have said many times at a lot of women's events, in particular, that the thing that I think you all have to be every single day is brave. I mean, Dan puts it out there every day. We all put it out there. Don't be afraid to lose. Don't be afraid to have the disappointment that Dan just shared with you. And then I'll tell you the sad part, which is also a defining thing. Every time I lose, and I didn't see it coming, in my business, you kind of sort of know whether you're going to get the votes you need at a commission meeting. There are times, and I had one just recently, in the city of Lauderhill, not an easy place to do business, not a place I, quite frankly, ever want to go back to, representing a charter school, high school, that has been operating in Sunrise for 6 years, lost their lease, needed a new place, wanted to build their own campus. They take students, high school students, who the public school system has in one way or another failed. They transform their lives, and literally 80% of their students go on to a 4-year degree. The other 20% either go to the military or to a trade school. Incredibly successful, really helping a portion of our population. I truly believe in what they're trying to do. We go to the city of Lauderhill and needed a special exception, meaning I needed 4, and I needed a super majority. 4 out of the 5 commissioners had to vote yes. We had done all of our homework, we had met with whom we needed to, and our 4th vote didn't vote for us, and we failed 3-2. It's devastating. Now, in my earlier days, I would have been incredibly upset. I've learned to deal with disappointment and to recognize there was nothing more I could have done. We did everything possible to be successful there, but for whatever reason, Commissioner Grant, if any of you live in Lauderhill, voted no, and we were dead. And the client had invested time and money, and he's missing another year, and now we're looking for another site in another jurisdiction. I've had that kind of experience probably 10 times in all the years. But when it happens, you don't see it coming, you don't know where it is, and it's usually something completely unrelated to what you're doing, right? And we are at the mercy in this business of elected officials, and the majority of them are not Dan Storm. And as you can tell, probably, we're good friends. We were friends before this life. We keep our professional stuff as clear as we can. But elected officials, for the most part, are not Dan Storm, and I'll just leave it at that. So you have to be aware of it.
That's a perfect closing. Thank you very much today.
Whatever you choose to do, be proficient, know your craft, and be passionate. If you're not passionate, it's a job. You know what? We all have jobs. If you're passionate, you're important to you, and therefore you'll fight hard.
And do
for
your
yourself
homework.
and your client. So be passionate.
Good luck.